probably had to deal with large-scale works, space operas, adventure and fantasy series, or science fiction, the action of events that take place in distant galaxies, in the vastness of our vast universe. I have always liked this kind of atmosphere. It fascinates, gives the plot a special meaning, and creates a certain entourage. A simple story immediately filled with bright colors. Take, for example, the classic Star Trek. Ordinary of space truckers. Curiosity and the spirit of pioneers are in people's blood. New, unexplored territories always attract in the first place, with their mystery. I want to know what is there, lurking behind the curtain of incomprehensibility. Is there a limit to infinity? However, why is space associated with infinity? Probably because space is something that can be easily perceived. You can freely dream about it and discuss it. Although the subject of discussion is not fully explored, its basis is clear. Its condition, its position, and laws are clear. This is what fits into the picture of the world of any primitive consciousness, as something as far as possible, and as a result, what contains everything. The limitation of the animal consciousness lies in the fact that it equates certain sets, perceived by it, with all the rest, not perceived. Physicists boldly equate one infinite system of sets to others, interpreting the world order in a single, centrally perceived version. While in mathematics for some reason they do not risk doing this, because it will devastate it. And as long as we live by these double standards, deceiving ourselves and convincing ourselves that our world is only what can be seen and heard, we will remain animals. If different scientific disciplines give different answers to the same questions, the soul becomes sad. In this book, you will have an epic and extremely long journey of all that can be imagined. We will go as far as not one person has gone, even in the wildest assumptions.
In order to pave the way to these truly insane frontiers, we will have to introduce many new terms, the explanations of which will be attached. In addition, how else to operate with something that does not even have a formulation? After all, we are not going to some neighboring planet, but much, much further. Beyond the event horizon. Beyond the multiverse, and beyond what is even hypothetically impossible to perceive as a human being. But, most importantly, here, you will not encounter philosophical nonsense, and complex scientific concepts, with which many famous authors of works of art unreasonably like to download the brain of readers to add seriousness to their naive intentions. Agree, with the help of a simple, colloquial text, it is much more pleasant to visualize what is happening. If you read to relax, get a portion of unforgettable emotions, this is definitely your option. The RAPTITES, Beyond Perfection is a captivating sci-fi novel. In this text, you will not find beautiful literary slang and a rich vocabulary, although I might like it, but, unfortunately, I am not a philologist by education. On cliched heroes, with clearly defined characters, and all sorts of intrigues, too, do not really count. Do not think badly, I love intricate plots, all sorts of monsters, with curved horns and sharp teeth. Kindred, tribal feuds, the struggle for power, for resources. Wow, how exciting. Insidious sorcerers in robes seem extremely pathetic, but due to their intelligibility, they easily take over the reader. As the saying goes, it looks so bad it's good. Here, honestly, in stories where there is good and evil, I absolutely equally empathize with both heroes and villains, because they are all so cute. Defenseless and undemanding. Undemanding because they have limited goals. It doesn't matter if these goals are good or bad. The maximum they want is to either destroy everything around, or save everything around. What do they mean by everything? As a rule, this is what they themselves can see. And, based on the fact that they can see terribly little, destroy or save, they also want little. This book is for the most spoiled fantasy lovers. Space, planets, interstellar travel. All this baby rubbish is here just to make fun of her. I won't try to surprise you with just big like they do in preschool sci-fi. How annoying it is when in all sorts of articles and forums, you can find the same information duplicated 1,000 times, in the style, "Our universe is 13 billion years old, can you imagine how much it is? This star is 250 times larger than our sun 6 times. And a black hole has such a strong gravity that it distorts space and time." In general, they are counting on stupid ordinary people who simply admire great distances, speeds, masses, temperatures, and simply large numbers. Content for sane people is very rare. It's no secret that it exists only in the form of boring text and incomprehensible formulas. Popularizers intentionally avoid difficult topics for various reasons. I like the real unknown. And I crave to dive into it, for the most do not indulge. I am not happy with any restrictions, but I have to put up with it. They shape our whole life. They are part of ourselves. Just imagine if there were no word impossible in the world. Yes, what is there in the world, at least in mathematics? Then, you would understand how much we are attached to restrictions. How badly we need them. I am well aware that no one, in general, needs a real future. It is alien to us, completely uninteresting. Criticism of Stanislav Lem about this was very entertaining. He said that people need characters that are extremely similar to people or animals, to somehow respond to them, fear or empathize. Aliens endowed with reason should be similar to people, if not outwardly, then at least in psychology or temperament. And so that all their problems, it is desirable, or like people's. Otherwise, they will be boring, unattractive. Repair of the spacecraft or lack of energy. All these are banal reflections of our own lives, which allow the reader to better immerse himself or herself in the plot. Imagine yourself at the scene. People can only like their own past and present. Anyone who says that he is interested in the future is either a liar or a fool who does not understand the difference between the future and the idealized present. Or, it's just crazy, like me. With the help of new ideas, many of the shortcomings associated with destructive visualization can be overcome. Believe me, this will not affect the full immersion in what is happening. Moreover, even if there are no people in the work at all, it can be made interesting. It all depends on the implementation, on the presentation. The main goal of the book is to demonstrate original ideas that do not pretend to anything. They just might serve as inspiration. Do you need reflections? Well, you will get them, but only as a warm-up. The story of adventures, in the form of alien creatures, is not exactly what you should focus on. They are nothing more than an addition to this boundless, delightful landscape, like Tolkien's inhabitants of Middle-earth, were just icing on the cake. In addition, if, in The Lord of the Rings, the center of the narrative is linguistic diversity, then here the fundamental directive, at least, is everything that exists. I responsibly declare that this work is the freest from any restrictions. She is limited only by political correctness, due to the strict censorship of most countries.
With the help of new ideas, many of the shortcomings associated with destructive visualization can be overcome. Believe me, this will not affect the full immersion in what is happening. Moreover, even if there are no people in the work at all, it can be made interesting. It all depends on the implementation, on the presentation. The main goal of the book is to demonstrate original ideas that do not pretend to anything. They just might serve as inspiration. Do you need reflections? Well, you will get them, but only as a warm-up. The story of adventures, in the form of alien creatures, is not exactly what you should focus on. They are nothing more than an addition to this boundless, delightful landscape, like Tolkien's inhabitants of Middle-earth were just icing on the cake. In addition, if, in The Lord of the Rings, the center of the narrative is linguistic diversity, then here the fundamental directive, at least, is everything that exists. I responsibly declare that this work is the freest from any restrictions. She is limited only by political correctness due to the strict censorship of most countries. Grado phase agenoske. Perhaps this information is submitted too early and will seem unacceptably difficult to understand and, in general, redundant. One way or another, it is necessary to draw a big picture at an early stage in order to determine the frame of reference for further narrative and not swim in ignorance around the bush. Detailed explanations of the concepts present here will be revealed in the course of the story. Agenoska is also a complex of neuritic states of symmetrical collaborations of various databases, united by typing, hierarchy, content structure, and quality of execution. For example, the Hervium database we are considering, ordered according to the principles of social relationships of the mind, enclosed in a multiple organic representation. It includes both narrower and wider bases. It is worth paying special attention to Sigit and Verhubo with endless modifications. Hervium's device is intuitive, although it needs further explanation. It is based on the superunification of all sets of extrapolated supra, order, super, logic hyperunification of Homo repo. On the scale of this system, everything that comes to mind fits. The structure of Hervium is much wider than a compilation of adaptive worlds of material representatives of the higher mind, false RAPTITES, which have conditions similar to human ones, statuses, goals, aspirations, preferences, and so on. We think this is normal, something meaningful. I want to watch the development of events that are orderly, logical, and intriguing. Sigit is already much more interesting. However, not from the point of view of people, of course, otherwise it would be more correct to consider it as a plot. Sigit is the highest database based on common systematized interaction. This database does not classify such concepts as determinism, rationalism, and even more so the objectification of the mind in the format of higher categories of states. It is built on similar neuritic characteristics, despite the fact that it may seem unrelated, alien, and not valid for simpler systems of the same neuritic. The main principle of this system is the familiar blatant fundamentalism of analyzing data, conditions, and decisions, only in unrelated multiple unions, leading to the maximum variability within the framework of this system for polynomial shifts of the F dissonance of Nin and spectral shifts. These are computational operations of collapsing series of sequences, constantly passing from the stages of acceleration to new oscillatory or stable states. They do not have physical characteristics, and in the understanding of the same people, do not exist at all. Collapsing series is difficult to associate with some kind of mind, and it is simply not possible to compare their convergence of load categories with unrelated predicates with our usual goals and achievements. However, Sigit is much more extensive and multifunctional than the Hervium world we understand. The range of its influence with the environment is much higher, but despite this, a number of summary characteristics of the Agenoska archives limits it. Verkubo, database with Vivomor Neorid. It arrives in the highest appliqued projection of the Agarian net dissonance of the Naifo code and greatly surpasses Sigit with Hervium in its range of coverage. It is already difficult to attribute the concept of existence to Verkubo, even in the mathematical representation of RAPTITES, not to mention the banal belonging to space and time, which for her are both ignored simplest constants and convenient elements for speculation. In addition to databases, the Grado phase includes other slots that are not related to information, non-information, outside the information or anti-information concept. With the methods of rational thinking available to us, it is impossible not to prove it, not to disprove it, not to imagine it, not to imagine it, not to doubt it. Tease is an example of such a slot. These are some multifricates belonging to Eucrapade multivarieties brackets open explainable, inexplicable not brackets open again explainable, inexplicable brackets closed, question mark brackets closed, question mark brackets closed, and brackets closed and brackets closed. in empty brackets, that it is impossible even to designate. It is not something that is outside of any varieties and not something that is included in them. It is not capable of operating with either the relativity of sets or unknown non-set components or determining belonging to something, even in the format of an abstract comparison to truth, falsehood, or uncertainty. The question mark implies the representation of an alternative belonging, which is actually not an alternative. And it is a mistake to designate it this way, however. At least some, albeit an incorrect representation, emerges in this way. After all, in reality, there is not a single clue to establish a connection with similar. It is impossible for him to pick up even a name, in the truest sense of the word. If it is invented, it will fundamentally give rise to conceptual mathematical contradictions at all levels. No, of course, it can be given a name for convenience, but in reality, it cannot have one. It be cannot named even as that which cannot be named. All names will become erroneous, as they assign verbal, alphabetic, numerical, mental, or other informational or non-world-side informational, that is, related characteristics, which is no longer acceptable. In principle, it cannot be attributed even to an unknown format or category. It is unrealistic to think about it, and it is not real not to think about it. Attempts to understand it destroy all interconnections between manifolds in the bud. This is the same as saying that logic is anti-logic, order is chaos, wet is dry, pineapple is peach, and stuff like that. Therefore, when talking about the tie is slot, we are not talking about it at all, but about the phenomenon of complete informational denial. Complete informational denial can take us to the level of verhubo, which is the last connected informational link, but no further. For systems that are immune to at least some representation of diversity, a paradoxical vicious circle of unpredictability of known fundamentals within the framework of a complete system is characteristic. All possible and impossible existence, as well as systems of higher orders, including Lodnea outside existence, are neither a path to Crepades yet, nor a pointer that is simply attributed as a reminder of the final obligatory cycle of absolute completeness. I think that says it all. In fact, this crapade is a fascinatingly strange thing. In the world of Hervium, it is referred to as an alternative or contiguous paradoxicality of the absolute unification of Homeropyle. Now, let us ask the silly but adored question: who created these databases? After all, we love to look for creators everywhere, don't we? Nevertheless, does every effect need a cause? In addition, are they always separated at all? In Agarian, for example, there is no time, and hence there is no moment of creation. All that is, there has always been and always will be, just like it never was and never will be. Past, future, present, these concepts are not relevant there. Do you want to feel yourself in an Agarian contact with time and space? Well, that beacon arranged, take a notebook sheet and paint over one arbitrary cell with a pencil. Then select another adjacent cell on both sides and paint over it too. It does not matter if it's up, down, left, or right. After painting two cells, you will determine the direction, and then paint over all the cells, in order, in one straight line. Not fun? And this is the directed flow of time. How long can you do this, having the opportunity to paint over any cells, not just neighboring ones in one direction, as well as having the opportunity to pour yourself a cup of tea? You are unlikely to resort to such a boring task. Agree, there are much more interesting cases. It turns out that no one created information databases, associated inversion additions, and other offshoots of a Janoska's Grotto phase, and they did not appear on their own. They simply exist, and, at the same time, they do not exist in the format of an unprovable assertion, and this is the full explanation of their superexistence. The maximum degree of presence in T's is possible in the Bucamarasso trait, Ajanaska limits only yet crepade, which, in fact, cannot even have a false mention of itself, by any single normative or pledge method, like it crapade, that there is it crapade. That there is yet crapade is what is missing from the assumptions of alleged unrelated slots. All that can be said about her is that she is the horizon of mathematical events.
Nature Crook 1. The silent silence of the chilling interstellar space is striking in its calmness and constancy. It seems that time has no power over these places. In front of us flashes the distant rays of the visible spectrum of the DEP 512 supercluster, the Nebula Galaxy, located at a distance of 1.8 LMEBs from the Saori Galaxy. The Laniakea supercluster. 1 LMEB is equal to 1.4 cmb event horizon radii. That is 64 billion light-years. Even by astronomical standards, this distance is quite large. Such a long journey extends from the Swaimdove system to our home of the solar system. However, it is here, in fact, that the nearest planet exists, with a form of life and a mind similar to a human. Approximately such aliens people wanted to see in horror films, books, and legends. Creepy, giant arthropods, with a developed intellect and a collective way of life. Why exactly them? Where did they come from? How real can this phenomenon be? If we could see infinitely far away, we would not have to look around. Unbelievably, by looking at one point, we could see all possible events on one infinitely thin, dimensionless straight line. Everyone knows that sooner or later, in an open system of diversity, the final images begin to repeat themselves. These are the natural laws of combinatorics, statistics, and probability theory. But it doesn't fit in my head that a one-dimensional world can simulate an n-dimensional representation. The simple can contain the complex, and not only vice versa. The more we dive into mathematical logic, the more this world frightens our consciousness. The organic structure, the human body, has an exact copy. At a distance of about 101,028 meters, the structure is slightly simpler. For example, a car can meet already at a distance of less than 101,020 meters. Even simpler states of compounds known to us, such as stars or comets, which do not have a strict sequence at the molecular and atomic level, can be found absolutely identical in shape and chemical composition, already within the same galaxy. Any of our fantasy, at a certain distance, materializes into reality. We can present any image we like, and not seek justification for it in existence. The planet Crook is very similar to Earth. It orbits the G2V hydrogen-helium star Swaimdove, which also strongly resembles the Sun. This is a relatively young system, 1.3 billion years younger than our solar system. However, young age did not prevent the emergence of life and go through a long chain of evolution. Despite the fact that Crook is the closest planet to Swaimdove, the distance between them is 0.99 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun. On Crook, as on the early Earth, the atmosphere, with an excessively high content of oxygen. From orbit, it looks bluish, and the only green continent, like a wide tablecloth, encircles the planet along the equator. In some places, this soil belt cracked because of the pressure of magma trying to break through from the red-hot core. The long-cooled surface of the formed crust inevitably divided into lithospheric plates and began to move erratically. This only made Crook more beautiful. The green ring began to turn into a spiral, or something like it, enveloping the surface of the planet like a bright festive ribbon on a Christmas present. Island paths branch aesthetically into the ocean like bulging veins in mottled skin. Spots are dense clouds dispersed mostly locally in dense masses. There is practically no temperature difference on the planet. At both poles and the equator, all year round it is from +24 to +36 degrees Celsius. This makes the Crook habitable at all its points. Global natural disasters, by some miracle, bypass this planet. No wonder life has evolved so far, in such a short space of time. After all, they didn't have to start over every time like we did. Stuck in roughly the Carboniferous, Paleozoic era, Crook has maintained natural stability for a whopping 1.5 billion years. Given the age of the planet, only 3 billion years, this is half of its full existence.